Welcome back to Math. This is Section 9 on Interpreting Charts. We'll talk about circle or pie charts, line charts, and bar charts. Charts display data visually. A chart tells a story quickly and effectively. It's easier to interpret charts when you are familiar with the three main kind of charts and their parts. We'll start with circle or pie charts. A circle chart shows an entire set of data broken down into its parts. Its parts, therefore, add up to the whole. If a chart shows percentages, for example, the total of those percents should add up to 100%. Circle charts are also called pie charts. They are round like pies, and we can think of each piece as a slice of pie. Are all the slices the same size, or are some bigger than others? Who, or what category, is getting the big slice of the pie? The chart title is the first thing you should read. The chart title for this circle chart says Breakfast Beverage Choice. The title tells us that the pie pieces are going to show what some people choose to drink with their breakfast. In this example, there are 4 beverage choices: coffee, tea, juice, and water. The segment or the piece of the pie for coffee is almost half of the entire circle. That quickly tells us that coffee is the most common choice of beverage with breakfast. In this example, the choices and percentages are outside the circle, but positioned close to their corresponding segments. This is really the same chart, just formatted a little bit differently. Now the list of beverages is over here on the side in what we call a legend. The color next to each beverage is the same as the color of its segment, and the percentages are shown inside. After you've read the title and you've looked at the names of each segment, think about what the picture shows. In this case, we notice that coffee is the most common choice. It's almost half of the entire circle. Then consider each part of the chart. How many segments are there? Are they mostly the same size, or are they very different? On a test situation, you might be asked, what's the most common breakfast beverage choice? It's clear that coffee is the most common, because it is the biggest segment. Another question might be, what is the least common beverage choice? And that would be the smallest segment, which is water. With a little more information, we can calculate how many people chose each beverage. So if 250 people were surveyed to gather this data, how many chose water as their breakfast beverage? So in a circle chart, the segments add up to the total. That means if 250 people were surveyed and 10% chose water, 10% of 250 is 25. So we can calculate that 25 people chose water. A second most common type of chart is a line chart. A line chart is often used to show a trend, often over time. There's an x-axis, which is horizontal, and a vertical y-axis. Each axis is also likely to have an axis title that tells us the measurements that are included in the chart. Generally, the values on each axis increase from left to right and increase from bottom to top. Again, start with the chart title and then read the axis titles. Let's look at this chart with a title called ABC Bank. The horizontal x-axis is labeled weekday, and we see that the values start with Monday and go on through Saturday. The vertical y-axis is labeled number of customers. There are grid lines here that show the intervals. They're marked from 0 to 120. So just from this information, we know we will be learning about the trend of how many customers visit the bank during the week. The line in this chart connects the values for each day. In this chart, those values are given exactly. 100 customers on Monday, for example. Sometimes the exact value isn't given, so we use this y-axis, go over on the grid, and see where it matches up to get the number. The next thing to consider when looking at a line chart are the high and the low points. In this case, on which day does the bank have the largest number of customers? Well, the highest point here is here on Monday. Which day has the smallest number of customers? Well, the low point is here, and that lines up with Saturday. Test questions might be as simple as finding those high and low points. Or a test question might require us to make some sort of connection with something else we know about banks. For example, on what day would you expect the longest lines at the ABC Bank? Well, again, since Monday has the most customers, we would conclude that the lines are the longest on Mondays. Line charts can also have 2 or even more lines. Again, first let's read the chart title. This is about math test scores. Now we'll read the axis titles: hours per week spent on homework, and average grade. And those grades go from 40 to 100, and the hours go from 1 to 5. There's 2 lines here, and they're both different colors. The blue line, according to the legend, is for the boys, and the red line is for the girls. Now that we know what's on the chart, think about what the chart is telling us. Is there a relationship? Well, yes, for both boys and girls, the more hours spent on homework per week, math grades go up. What about other questions we could answer from this chart? Like, which gender gains the biggest increase in test score when homework hours increase from 1 to 2? So we would look at the interval from 1 to 2 and see which has a bigger slant. They're both about the same, maybe a little higher for boys. Or, what is the fewest number of hours girls can spend on math homework to achieve the highest average score? Well, the highest score is up here, but for girls it seems to level off between 5 and 6. So maybe girls only need to spend 5 hours a week on homework. Finally, we'll look at bar charts. They're very similar to line charts, also with a horizontal and vertical axis, but instead of showing the trend line, each data point is represented with a bar. This is the exact same data that we just saw in the last line chart, but now you'll notice that it's got bars, these rectangles. Still has the same title, Math Test Scores. We're still looking at hours spent on homework, and the average grade. We still have blue for boys and red for girls. If you connected the top of each one of these lines, you would actually get the line chart that we just saw. Which format is easier to interpret or represents the data better? Often, format is just a matter of personal preference. The choice of format might also depend on the data being represented. When there are many lines in a line chart, each one crossing each other frequently, the data may look simpler represented by a bar chart. Whichever format is used, the process of interpreting the chart remains the same. Read the chart title, read the axis titles, consider what the segments are, and finally look for trends.